Hello everyone, welcome back to Marcelliano MMA. Today we're going to be breaking down UFC Fight Night Duplessis vs Usman, and in this video we're going to be going over the prelims. The fights this will consist of is Anna Mellisano vs Dion Barbosa, RJ Harris vs Alvin Hines, Alden Coria vs Stuart Nicoll, Ezra Elliot and Damian Anderson, Levi Rodriguez Jr. Felipe Franco, Jean-Paul Lebosaniani vs Nicoll, or however you say his name, Austin Bashi vs Jose Miguel Delgado, and yeah, before I go into this fight, I want to say this is the hardest card I've ever broken down. Like, this is my second time posting it to YouTube, but like breaking down in general, this was a hard fight to break down. To be honest, like the card in general, there's just a lot of fights where I think it can go both ways. But I did my research, I did my tape, and I'm gonna be giving you guys the best picks. I have the script. Okay, so we're gonna be starting with Anna Mellisano vs Dion Barbosa. Now this is a matchup between a younger prospect who's athletic versus a more experienced grappling specialist. Mellisano is a striker with good physical tools and a finishing ability, while Barbosa is the more proven MMA fighter with a dangerous submission game and a big advantage on the ground. The biggest question in this fight is whether Mellisano can keep the fight standing and use her striking, or if Barbosa can get the fight to the mat and make a deal with her submission game. Looking at Anna Mellisano, she comes in this fight with a 6-0 record and is stepping in on short notice as a replacement, which is something to look at. She's a younger prospect who has shown a lot of potential, especially with her athleticism and striking ability. Mellisano is 5'6" with a 70-inch reach, giving her a reach advantage over Barbosa. On the feet, this is where she has the biggest advantage. She has good speed, athletic movement, and the ability to create damage with her striking. She is not just a point fighter, she has shown real finishing ability with her hands. Mellisano does a good job using her range and athleticism to create openings. If she can keep Barbosa at the end of her punches, avoid getting trapped against the cage, and force a striking heavy fight, she has the tools to make this competitive. The biggest question for Mellisano is her defensive grappling. Against most opponents, her athleticism and striking can create problems, but Barbosa is a completely different challenge. She's not just looking for one takedown, she chains attacks together and constantly looks for submissions once the fight hits the ground. Looking at Dion Barbosa now, she comes into this fight with a 9-4 record and is 3-2 in the UFC. She is the more experienced fighter and has faced a much higher level of competition. Barbosa's biggest strength has always been her grappling, coming from a background in judo and Brazilian jiu-jitsu while training at King's MMA. Barbosa is 5'6" with around the 66-inch reach, giving Mellisano the advantage in length. However, Barbosa's advantage is not physical, it's technical. She is one of those fighters who's become more dangerous the longer the fight goes on. On the ground, Barbosa is extremely dangerous. She has 4 submission victories and is constantly hunting for finishes. She does a great job scrambling, attacking transitions, and forcing opponents to defend multiple threats at once. One thing that separates Barbosa is her experience. She's already had through and through UFC fights and has dealt with different styles at the highest level. Against a prospect like Mellisano, that experience could be a major factor. And if the fight gets difficult, the biggest concern for Barbosa is getting into a pure striking battle. Mellisano has the reach advantage, better natural striking tools, and the power to make Barbosa respect her. Barbosa needs to close the distance, avoid taking unnecessary damage, and make this fight happen in the areas where she has the biggest advantages. The biggest question in this fight is whether Mellisano's striking and range can keep Barbosa away, or if Barbosa's grappling will eventually take over. And I personally do think Dion Barbosa gets it done. I like what Mellisano brings because she has the athleticism, she has the reach advantage, and enough striking ability to make this fight dangerous. However, Barbosa's experience and grappling advantages are just too big of factors for me to ignore. I expect Mellisano to have success early, whilst the fight is standing, possibly in the first round. But Barbosa should eventually find opportunities to get the fight down in attacking submissions. I have Dion Barbosa winning about 70% of the time, and I think the most likely outcome is a submission, though a decision I don't think is impossible. Mellisano's best path is using her range, defending takedowns, and forcing Barbosa into a striking fight, but Barbosa has the skill set to completely change the fight once it hits the ground. And that's going to be wrapping up the first fight. Next fight we have is RJ Harris vs Alvin Hines. So yeah, this is a heavyweight matchup between an undefeated... Bro, this fight one of the hardest to predict, but I think I got it correct. Okay. So the heavyweight matchup, undefeated prospect, major physical advantages, and a more experienced fighter with a proven finishing ability. Harris is the younger and much bigger fighter with the reach advantage, while Hines brings more professional experience and has already faced UFC level competition. The biggest question in this fight is whether Hines can make it ugly and use his experience to find the finish. So yeah, looking at RJ Harris, he comes in this fight with a 5-0 record and is an undefeated heavyweight prospect. Harris is a massive 6'6" with an 80-inch reach, giving him a major advantage in both height and length. Harris is a well-rounded fighter, has shown finishing ability in multiple areas. He has 3 submission wins and 1 TKO, showing that he is not just a striker who relies on power. He can hurt opponents on the feet, but he is also comfortable using his grappling when the opportunity is there. On the feet, Harris's biggest advantage is his size. At heavyweight, having a 6-inch reach advantage and a significant height advantage is a massive advantage in general. It can completely change how exchanges happen. He can fight behind his jab, maintain distance, and make opponents take risks to get inside. Grappling is another area where Harris is interesting. His submission wins show that he is dangerous once the fight hits the ground. Against a smaller heavyweight like Hines, Harris could potentially use his size to control positions, force opponents to carry his weight, and create submission opportunities. The biggest question for Harris is his experience level. While he is undefeated, he has not been through the same amounts of adversity as Hines. Heavyweight fights can change instantly, and Harris has to prove he can stay composed. If Hines pressures him or lands something big, that could just change the fight completely in an instant. Not looking at Alvin Hines, he comes in this fight with a 7-1 record and is the more experienced fighter. Hines is 6'2" with a 74-inch reach, meaning he gives a significant size and reach advantage to Harris. Hines is a dangerous finisher with 3 KO victories and 3 submission victories. He is not someone who needs to dominate every minute of the fight. He has the ability to create one big moment and end the fight. On the feet, Hines is at his best when he can pressure forward and get into his opponent's range, which could be hard against somebody like Harris who has such a range advantage. The problem in this matchup is that Harris's length can make that difficult. Like I said, Hines will have to close distance without absorbing too much damage. Grappling is where Hines could make this fight competitive. He has shown he is comfortable finishing fights on the ground, and if he can't get inside for clinch exchanges or take Harris down, he can remove some of the Harris's physical advantages. The biggest concern for Hines is the size difference. Harris is not only taller but also has a 6-inch reach advantage. If Hines can consistently get inside, he may spend the fight chasing a much longer opponent. The biggest question in this fight is whether Harris's size and undefeated momentum are enough to overcome Hines' experience and finishing ability. And I do think RJ Harris gets it done. Hines is a dangerous because he has experience and finishing ability to make this fight a dangerous fight, but Harris has too many physical advantages. The height, reach, and well-rounded skill set are making this a difficult matchup, especially if he can keep the fight at range and avoid unnecessary exchanges. And I know I'm bringing up the reach and size advantage a lot, but this is a heavyweight matchup where that matters a lot. And for a guy like Hines, his style relies on getting inside, like getting in clinch, stuff like that. It's not possible with a guy like a Reach. Like, that's such a big advantage. I originally was on Hines because I thought he was more skilled, but I switched to Harris, and I do think Harris is correct. So yeah, I have RJ Harris winning this round 60 to 65% of the time, and the most likely outcome is a decision or a late finish. Hines' best path is forcing a close range fight and finding a submission or a knockout opportunity, but Harris has the tools to control the pace and use his size advantage. Now the next fight we're going to be having is Coria vs Nicoll. So yeah, this is a matchup between two flyweights with the opposite momentum. Coria is a more proven and well-rounded fighter coming off a strong start in the UFC with a clear grappling advantage. Nicoll is a dangerous pressure fighter with finishing ability, but he is still searching for his first UFC win. The biggest question is whether Nicoll can make this fight chaotic enough to overcome Coria's technical advantages, or if Coria can control the pace and take advantage of the skill gap. Looking at Coria, he's come to this fight with a 12-3-1 record and has started his UFC career 2-0. Coria is 5'8" with a 6'7" reach, giving him a solid physical tools for the flyweight division, giving him a noticeable size advantage over Nicoll. Coria is a well-rounded grappler, has built his game around controlling positions and creating submission opportunities. He is not just a wrestler looking for takedowns. He uses his grappling to put his opponents in dangerous situations and constantly look for ways to finish. On the feet, Coria is improving and has shown he can be effective, but his biggest advantage comes from how well he mixes everything together. His striking helps him close distance, create opportunities, and force opponents to react before transitioning into grappling. Once the fight hits the ground, Coria becomes much more dangerous. His submission ability and control make him a difficult matchup for opponents who cannot consistently defend transitions. He is the type of fighter who can win minutes while also being a threat to finish at any moment. So yeah, the biggest concern with Coria is that he can sometimes rely heavily on his grappling. Against a pressure fighter like Nicoll, he has to avoid getting dragged into wild exchanges and stay disciplined with his game plan. Now I know some people are gonna say, "Oh, Coria is a -1000. Why are you breaking it like Nicoll can win?" And I bring this up because Nicoll can win, bro. Anything can happen in MMA, so I don't care if it. I broke down Gable Stevenson. I don't care if you're a -10,000 favorite. I'm gonna be breaking down the fight and how your opponent could win. Yeah, but now looking at Stuart Nicoll, he comes in this fight with an 8-3 record, but is currently 0-3 in the UFC, and looking for his first win inside the promotion. Nicoll is 5'5" with around the 65.5-inch reach, meaning he gives up a clear height and reach advantage to Coria. Nicoll's biggest weapon is his aggression. He's a pressure fighter who likes to move forward, make his opponents uncomfortable, and turn fights into high-paced battles. He has proven finishing ability with 4 KO wins and 3 submission victories, showing he is dangerous anywhere the fight goes. On the feet, Nicoll wants to make Coria uncomfortable. He does not want a slow technical fight where Coria can pick his moments. He needs to push forward, land heavy shots, and force Coria into mistakes. The problem for Nicoll is the high level of competition he has faced in the UFC. He has struggled against higher level opponents, and this matchup gives him another difficult test against someone who's more complete and technical sound. Grappling wise is the biggest area of concern. Nicoll is dangerous himself, but Coria's ability to control positions and hunt submissions could become a major problem if Nicoll gives up bad positions or gets stuck defending underneath. The biggest question in this fight is whether Nicoll's pressure and finishing ability can overwhelm Coria, or if Coria's experience in grappling control will take over. I think Coria will get it done. Nicoll is dangerous because he brings constant pressure and has the power to change a fight, but Coria has a better overall skill set, better UFC experience, and the physical advantages. I expect Nicoll to have moments early because of his aggression, but as the fight continues, Coria's grappling should become the difference maker. I have Out and Coria winning around 70% of the time, and I think the most likely outcomes is a finish. I don't really see it going to decision. I could see a KO or submission. But yeah, I think inside the distance, Coria is the best there. Now, a fight that was added recently, Elliot vs Anderson. Okay, so now this is a matchup between two undefeated prospects with extremely dangerous grappling games. Both fighters are finishers who have built their careers around wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and controlling opponents on the ground. Elliot has the size advantage, wrestling pressure, and physicality, while Anderson is the more submission-focused grappler who thrives in scrambles and transitions. I don't know. I can't speak right now. Whew. So I think this fight comes down to who can control grappling exchanges because both guys are dangerous once the fight hits the mat. Looking at Ezra Elliott, he comes into this fight with an undefeated 7-0 record and has finished every opponent he has faced. He has 5 submission wins and 2 wins over TKO victories, showing that he is not just a wrestler looking for control. He actively hunts for finishes once he gets into dominant positions. Elliott is 5'10 with a 71.5-inch reach, giving him a size advantage at featherweight. He has a strong wrestling background, including being an Arizona high school wrestling champion, and trains out the MMA lab alongside high-level fighters. His wrestling is the foundation of his game, and he uses he uses his athleticism, pressure, and top control to force opponents into bad positions. So on the grappling side, Elliott is extremely dangerous because he combines wrestling control with his submission ability. A lot of wrestlers are only focused on takedowns and holding positions, but Elliott is constantly looking for ways to finish. Once he gets on top, he can use his pressure, ground and pound, and submission attacks to create problems. One thing I like about Elliott is that he has shown he can finish fights in multiple ways. His opponents cannot just focus on defending takedowns because even if they survive the first position, Elliott is still dangerous in later transitions. The biggest concern for Elliott is that Anderson is not someone who will be comfortable just accepting bad positions. Against elite submission grapplers, forcing a scramble can sometimes create more danger because they're constantly looking for openings. Elliott needs to be smart with his control and avoid giving Anderson unnecessary opportunities. Looking at Anderson, he comes into this fight with the undefeated and a 5-0 record, and has also finished every opponent he's faced, just like Elliot. He has 4 submission wins, 1 TKO victory, making it clear that this is his biggest weapon, is his ability to find finishes once the fight becomes a grappling battle. Anderson is 5'7" with a 70-inch reach and is naturally more of a bantamweight, moving up to featherweight for this matchup, something to look for. While he gives up some size to Elliot, his technical grappling ability is what makes him dangerous. He has a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background and has trained against around elite submission grappling systems, including connections to Danaher Death Squad. On the ground, Anderson is one of those fighters who becomes dangerous anywhere there is movement. He does not need to completely dominate positions to threaten. During scrambles, transitions, and defending reactions, he is constantly searching for submissions and forcing opponents to make mistakes. The biggest strength Anderson has is his ability to turn bad positions into dangerous ones. A wrestler may think they are winning because they secured a takedown, but against Anderson, every transition creates a chance for him to attack the neck, arms, or even the legs. The biggest concern for Anderson is the physical side of this matchup. Moving up in weight against a bigger wrestler is a difficult challenge because Elliot's strength and control make it harder for Anderson to create the scramble he normally relies on. If Elliot can keep top position and avoid giving Anderson openings, Anderson may struggle to find his offense. So the biggest question in this fight as a whole is whether Elliot can use his size and wrestling to control Anderson without getting caught in a submission, or if Anderson can turn those wrestling exchanges into the type of chaotic grappling situations where he's the most dangerous. I think Ezra Elliott does get it done. I think Anderson has a real path to winning because of his submission game is dangerous enough to threaten anyone at this level. However, Elliott's size, wrestling background, and ability to control positions, I believe, gives him the advantage. I expect Anderson to create some dangerous moments, but Elliott should be able to survive those attacks, force Anderson to carry his weight, and eventually take over as the fight goes on. I have Ezra Elliott winning this fight around 60 to 65% of the time. I think most likely outcome is the decision or late submission. Anderson's biggest weapon is always going to be the submission threat, but Elliott's wrestling and physical advantages are what makes him the safer pick. So yeah. Now going to Levi Rodrigue Jr. I believe this is the dude who was banned recently for using PEDs. I believe it was Levi. He's gonna be going against Felipe Franco. This is a matchup between two light heavyweight finishers. Rodriguez is the biggest prospect with a strong grappling base and physical advantages, while Franco is a more experienced fighter with a proven ability to finish fighters on both the feet and the ground. The biggest question is whether Rodriguez can use his size and grappling to control Franco, or if Franco's experience and finishing ability will allow him to create openings anywhere the fight goes. Looking at Levi Rodriguez Jr., he comes in this fight as the younger prospect with a strong grappling foundation. Rodriguez is 6'3" with a 78-inch reach, giving him a size and length advantage in this matchup. Rodriguez's biggest weapon is his grappling. He is comfortable using his size, strength, and control to get his opponents into bad positions and look for submissions. His style is built around him making fights physical and forcing opponents to deal with him in uncomfortable situations. On the feet, Rodriguez has shown power and the ability to be dangerous in exchanges. But his biggest advantage comes down to how he can mix everything together. He is not just looking for a takedown. He wants to create scrambles where opponents down and find finishing opportunities. The biggest strength for Rodriguez is his physicality. At light heavyweight, size matters, and being able to control positions against another dangerous fighter can be a major advantage. The biggest concern for Rodriguez is that Franco is not someone who would be comfortable only defending in one area. If Rodriguez cannot consistently control the grappling exchanges, he can find himself in a dangerous striking battle against a striker who has real knockout power. Now looking at Felipe Franco, he comes in this fight with a 10-2 record and is still only 25 years old. Franco is 6'1", is a 76-inch reach, giving up some size to Rodriguez, but bringing more experience and a proven finishing record. Franco is a complete finisher with 6 KO victories and 4 submission wins, showing that he is dangerous everywhere. He is not a fighter who needs to fight to stay in one area. He can hurt opponents standing and also finish once the fight hits the ground. On the feet, Franco has good power and aggression. He is dangerous in exchanges because he's always looking for ways to create damage rather than simply win minutes. His finishing instincts make him a threat anytime opponents leave openings. Grappling-wise, Franco is also dangerous. His submission victories show that he is comfortable in ground exchanges. It cannot simply be taken down and controlled without a fight. Against a grappler like Rodriguez, that ability to threaten back is important. The biggest advantage for Franco has is his experience. He already has been through much more professional fights and has faced higher level competition, which can matter when two aggressive finishers start trading momentum. The biggest concern for Franco is the size difference. Rodriguez is bigger, longer, and can potentially make things difficult if dominant positions get forced or forces extend grappling exchanges. The biggest question in this fight is whether Rodriguez's size and grappling can control Franco, or if Franco's experience and finishing ability can create the difference. I think Felipe Franco gets it done. I like this one. I'm pretty sure he's the dog as well. Felipe Franco's the dog, and I'm picking him. It's a competitive fight because Rodriguez has the physical tools and grappling ability to cause serious problems. However, Franco has shown he can finish fights in multiple ways. He has the experience edge around higher level competition. It also gives him the edge in my opinion. I expect Rodriguez to have success, or he can make the fight physical, force grappling exchanges. Ooh, I believe Rodriguez can do that, possibly, if he can. But Franco's ability to threaten both standing and on the ground make him difficult to control. I have Felipe Franco winning about 60% of the time, and I think the most likely outcome is a finish, KO or submission. I don't see this going to decision. Dangerous fight for both guys. Rodriguez, like I said, has a size advantage, and he does have a strong path through grappling, but I don't see Franco falling to that. Franco's finishing ability and roll around the game make him the safer pick. And now we're going to go to Jean-Paul Lesbioni versus KO, and then after this we'll have Austin Bashi versus Jose Megaro, and that will wrap up the prelims. So, going to Jean-Paul Gaultier Lesbioni versus Siakian KO. I don't know how to say his name. I'm pretty sure he has the Korean Mike Tyson, something like that. Matchup between two talented welterweight prospects with opposite strengths. Lesbiani is the more complete fighter with a dangerous grappling game and ability to win fights in multiple areas, while KO is one of the more dangerous strikers in this division as a whole with serious knockout power. The biggest question in this fight is whether Lesbiani can force KO into grappling exchanges, or if KO can keep the fight standing and let his power take over and get that KO. Looking at Jean-Paul Lesbioni, he comes into this fight with a 10-2 record and is a well-rounded prospect who has shown the ability to finish fights in different ways. Lesbiani is 5'11" with 72-inch reach, giving him a slight size advantage over KO. Lesbiani's biggest strength is his versatility. He is not a fighter who relies on just one area. He can strike, wrestle, and threaten submissions. His ability to mix everything together makes him difficult to prepare for because opponents cannot focus only on one weapon. On the ground, this is where Lesbiani has the biggest advantage. He has strong grappling background and is dangerous during transitions. If he gets top control or creates scrambles, he has the ability to put opponents in difficult positions and hunt for submissions. On the feet, Lesbiani is improving and has enough striking ability to make opponents respect him. However, his striking is usually used to create openings for his grappling rather than trying to win a pure striking battle. The biggest concern for Lesbiani is that KO is not someone who needs that many opportunities. If Lesbiani gets caught standing in front of him or enters range recklessly, KO has the power to completely change the fight. Looking at KO, he comes in a fight with a 13-2 record and has built a reputation around being one of the more dangerous strikers at welterweight. KO is 5'10" with a 71-inch reach, giving up a slight height and reach advantage to Lesbiani. KO is an aggressive southpaw striker, known for his power and finishing ability, and like I mentioned, he earned the nickname Korean Tyson because of his explosive boxing style and ability to hurt opponents with heavy shots. On the feet, KO is the biggest danger. On the feet, this is where the biggest danger KO can provide in this matchup. He applies pressure, throws powerful combinations, and does a good job forcing opponents into uncomfortable exchanges. He is not just trying to win rounds, he is constantly looking for the moment where he can land something fight-changing. One of the biggest advantages for KO is his finishing ability. He does not have any submission wins, which shows that his game is built around striking, but that striking threat is extremely dangerous. If he can keep the fight standing, he has the biggest weapon in this matchup. The biggest concern I have for KO is his grappling. Against a fighter like Lesbian, every exchange has a risk because one mistake can lead to a takedown, a bad position, or a submission attempt. KO needs to maintain distance, defend entries, and avoid getting stuck underneath. So the biggest question in this fight as a whole is whether Lesbian all-around game can neutralize KO's power, or if KO can force a striking battle and land a shot that just changes everything. I think KO gets it done. Lesbian is the more complete fighter and has the better path to winning if he can mix in wrestling and grappling. I'll give him that. However, I do believe KO's pressure, power, and ability to create damage make him extremely dangerous. I think Lesbian will have moments where he threatens with grappling, but KO's striking advantage is the difference maker. I have Seokhyun KO winning around 55, more likely 60% of the time, and I think most likely outcome is a KO, of course. So Lesbian best path is getting this fight to the ground and forcing KO to defend submissions, but if KO keeps the fight standing, avoids extended grappling exchanges, and uses his pressure, I think he has the tools to find the finish. So now looking at the time, this video is gonna wrap around 30 minutes. I don't know how many people actually watch this. Like, leave a comment down below if you'd prefer me to make these breakdowns shorter. Like, I like long, extensive breakdowns because it gives the people like you guys, like, if you're putting money, I want you to know what's happening, eh? But yeah, for Austin Bashi versus Miguel Delgado, the matchup between two talents. I'm tired of speaking. Two talented featherweight prospects with completely different paths to victory. Bashi is an elite grappler with a dangerous submission game and one of the better wrestling backgrounds in the division, while Delgado is a more athletic, striking-focused fighter with the physical tools to make this difficult. The biggest concern is whether Bashi can consistently drag Delgado into grappling exchanges, or if Delgado can keep the fight standing and make his athleticism and power the difference. Looking at Austin Bashi, he comes in this fight with a 14-1 record and has built his reputation around being one of the more dangerous young grapplers at featherweight. Bashi is 5'6" with a 70-inch reach, meaning he gives up some big size and length against many opponents, especially against Delgado. However, Bashi makes up for that with his explosiveness, wrestling ability, and elite grappling technique. Bashi's biggest strength is his wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has 6 submission victories, and showing that he can get his opponents in is that when he gets opponents into his world, he's extremely dangerous and does not need a dominant position for a long time. He's constantly attacking, creating scrambles, and looking for openings. One thing that stands out about Bashi is his ability to chain grappling attacks together. If an opponent defends the first takedown, he does not simply reset. He keeps forcing reactions until he finds another opportunity. On the feet, Bashi has improved, but striking is still not where he creates his biggest advantage. His goal is usually to close the distance against wrestling exchanges and force opponents to deal with his grappling. The biggest concern with Bashi is the physical matchup. Against a longer athletic fighter like Delgado, getting inside safely will be important. If Bashi struggles to close the distance or cannot keep Delgado down, he could spend too much time chasing the fight. Looking at Jose Miguel Delgado, he comes in this fight as a more athletic and physically gifted prospect. 5'11", 74-inch reach, and a 10-2 record, having advantages in length, explosiveness, and natural athleticism compared to Bashi. Delgado's biggest weapon is his striking. He is dangerous in open space, has good power, and can make opponents pay when they try to enter recklessly. Against a shorter grappler like Bashi, his biggest goal will be maintaining distance and forcing Bashi to take risks. On the feet, Delgado has the biggest advantage because he can fight at a range where Bashi is less comfortable. If he can keep his movement, use his athleticism, and avoid getting trapped against the cage, he has the tools to make this a very difficult fight for Bashi. Grappling is obviously the biggest test for Delgado. Bashi's wrestling and submission game are the biggest threats in this matchup. Delgado cannot just defend his first takedown and relax. He has to stay disciplined during scrambles because that is where Bashi is most dangerous. The biggest advantage Delgado has is that he does not have to beat Bashi everywhere. He simply needs to keep the fight standing, avoid extended grappling exchanges, and use his striking advantages. The biggest question as a whole in this fight is whether Bashi's elite grappling can overcome Delgado's athleticism and ability to create distance. I think Jose Miguel Delgado. I've been speaking for too long. Gets it done. Bashi is extremely dangerous. I will give him that. His submission game gives him a real chance against anyone. I believe this fight currently is pick'ems. which I think is good value for Delgado. However, the size and athleticism make this a difficult matchup. I think Delgado has enough defensive ability and physical tools to survive the dangerous grappling moments and make this fight happen on the V. Bashi's best path is getting early takedowns, creating scrambles, and finding submission. But if Delgado survives those positions, I think his striking and athleticism start to become a difference. I have Jose Miguel Delgado winning around 65%. But I want to say 65. Yeah, I think 65 is fair. And I think the most likely outcome is a decision. Dangerous fight for both guys. Bashi has the biggest single advantage with his grappling, but Delgado has the physical tools to make him work harder. Most opponents potentially keep the fight where he wants it. I would not be surprised with a JMD. I'll call him that. KO. I think KO is likely, but I don't know. KO decision is probably best value. Decision is plus 400. That's great value. But yeah, that's gonna be wrapping up for today's video. In the next video, we're gonna be going over Tommy McMillan, Tabitha Ricci, Chase Luber, Jarconier, and DDP, all of their fights. That's gonna be it for this video. A bit longer than I hoped, but I hope you guys did enjoy. I'm happy that I get to be done speaking. Yeah, the fight's tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoy. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoy, please like and subscribe, and I will be doing this for every card. And hope you guys have a great day, and I will be seeing you guys. Goodbye.